Imagine waking up every morning in a country that officially calls your closest ally its greatest enemy. A country where the flag of Israel is painted on sidewalks so people can walk over it. Now imagine you are Jewish, and this is your home. This is not a story from a history book. This is happening right now, today, in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the ancient city of Isfahan. Golden domes catching the afternoon sun, the smell of saffron and rosewater drifting through narrow stone alleyways, children running past centuries-old synagogues, old men sitting in tea houses, speaking Farsi with an accent passed down through generations. These are not tourists. These are not visitors. These are Iranian Jews, and they have been here for over 2,500 years. Long before Islam arrived in Persia, long before the word Iran even existed, the Jewish community of this land roots itself in one of the most dramatic moments in ancient history, the Babylonian captivity, 597 BC, when thousands of Jews were exiled from Jerusalem and brought to the ancient Near East. When the great Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon in 539 BC, he did something that stunned the ancient world. He freed them. He let the Jews return to their homeland if they wished, and some did. But many stayed because Persia had become home. Cyrus is to this day one of the few non-Jewish figures mentioned with reverence in the Hebrew Bible. The Jewish people remember him, and in Iran, his legacy is still etched in stone. For centuries, Iranian Jews lived through empires, Achaemenid, Sassanid, Islamic caliphates, Mongol invasions, Safavid kings. They faced persecution, they faced golden ages, they survived all of it. By the time the 20th century arrived, Iran was home to nearly 100,000 Jews. They were doctors, poets, merchants, musicians, deeply Persian, deeply Jewish, both at once. Then came 1979, and everything changed.
The Islamic Revolution swept through Iran like a fire. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi fled the country. Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile to a crowd of millions. The Islamic Republic was born. And for minorities, Christians, Zoroastrians, Baha'is, and Jews, the future became deeply uncertain. Here is the thing that shocks most people when they first hear it. The Islamic Republic, despite its fierce anti-Israel rhetoric, did not expel its Jewish citizens. It did not make Judaism illegal. In fact, and this surprises almost everyone, Judaism is officially recognized as a protected religion under the Iranian constitution. Iranian Jews have a reserved seat in parliament. They have functioning synagogues, they have kosher butchers, they have Jewish schools. But here is where it gets complicated. Here is where the story deepens. Because officially protected and genuinely free are two very different things. Within months of the revolution, fear swept through the Jewish community. Many had been closely associated with the Shah's government, with business networks, with Israel, a country that was now, overnight, transformed from an ally into the Zionist enemy. Anti-Israel slogans covered the walls of cities, and for Jewish Iranians, the line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism felt terrifyingly thin. The exodus began almost immediately. 80,000 Jews left within the first few years. Wealthy families, professionals, intellectuals, they packed what they could and fled. To the United States, to Israel, to Europe. Tehran's Jewish population collapsed. Isfahan, Shiraz, city after city saw its ancient Jewish neighborhoods grow quieter, emptier. And yet, not everyone left. Today, estimates suggest between 10,000 and 25,000 Jews remain in Iran. The number is debated, disputed, uncertain. Even they are not always sure how many they are. But they are there, in Tehran's Yusufabad neighborhood, in Isfahan, in Shiraz, living, breathing, practicing their faith in the shadow of a government that marches crowds through the streets chanting death to Israel. How do they do it? How do they survive? Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, as a community.
Picture a Thursday evening in Tehran. Inside a synagogue on a quiet street, men are preparing for Shabbat. The candles are lit, Hebrew prayers rise into the air. The Torah scroll, hundreds of years old, is handled with trembling reverence. Outside this building, the city buzzes. Motorcycles, street vendors, the call to prayer drifting from a nearby mosque. Inside, it is another world entirely. Iranian Jews have become masters of a quiet, careful existence. They live their faith privately, deeply. They do not announce themselves. A Jewish shopkeeper in the bazaar does not advertise his religion. A Jewish student at university keeps her head down, studies hard, says nothing that could attract trouble. They have learned, across generations, that survival sometimes means silence. But silence is not the whole story. There is a woman in Tehran, let's call her Miriam, though that is not her real name, because names matter here, and safety matters more. She is in her 60s. Her parents did not leave in 1979. Her grandparents are buried in Iran. Her children were born here. When asked why her family stayed while so many fled, she pauses for a long moment. Because this is our land too, she says. Our ancestors walked this soil before Islam, before Christianity, before any of this. How do you leave the graves of your grandparents? Miriam lights candles every Friday night. She cooks traditional Persian Jewish food, rice with saffron, lamb stew, pomegranate chicken that smells like a memory. Her neighbors are Muslim. They have known each other for 30 years. On Nowruz, the Persian New Year, celebrated by all Iranians regardless of religion, they share sweets across the doorstep. My neighbor once asked me, Miriam smiles, whether Jews celebrate Nowruz. I told her, we invented celebration. We were here first. This is one of the most surprising truths about the Iranian Jewish experience. At the personal, human level, neighbor to neighbor, colleague to colleague, life is often remarkably normal. Iranians as a people tend to separate their government's politics from their personal relationships. Anti-Israel sentiment is official, but anti-Semitism at the personal level is far less universal than outsiders imagine. Jewish students attend Iranian universities, Jewish doctors practice medicine, Jewish engineers work in industry. The community has its own schools, its own charities, its own social networks. Tehran alone has several active synagogues. Iran has the largest Jewish population in the Middle East outside of Israel, a fact that stuns people every time they hear it. But challenges exist. They are real, and they cannot be ignored.
Employment in government or the military is effectively closed to Jews. Certain professions carry invisible barriers. The educational system teaches narratives about Israel and Zionism that Jewish students must sit through in silence, reading textbooks that describe their ancestral homeland in terms of occupation and oppression. For a Jewish teenager in Tehran, this requires a kind of emotional compartmentalization that no child should need to master. There is also the question of Israel, the most painful, most dangerous question of all. If an Iranian Jew is discovered to have any contact with Israel, family members, business connections, even a phone call, the consequences can be severe. In the early years of the Republic, several prominent Jewish leaders were executed, accused of spying for Israel. The fear of that accusation never fully disappears. It sits, quietly, at the back of every mind. In 1999, 13 Iranian Jews were arrested in Shiraz, accused of espionage. The case shook the community to its core. International pressure eventually led to most of them being released or given reduced sentences, but the message was received, clearly, permanently. You are protected, but you are watched. And yet, every year thousands of Jewish pilgrims travel from Israel, from America, from across the world to a shrine in the mountains near Hamadan, the tomb of Esther and Mordecai. Yes, that Esther, the Jewish queen of the Persian king Ahasuerus, whose story is told in the book of Esther, whose bravery saved her people from annihilation. Her tomb stands in Iran, maintained, visited, honored. The Islamic Republic, despite everything, allows this. Jewish pilgrims land in Tehran and travel to this ancient shrine, sometimes with government-issued guides, sometimes with quiet permission. It is one of the most quietly extraordinary religious facts in the modern world. Iran is also home to the tomb of Daniel the prophet, revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike, in the city of Susa. The country's soil is soaked in Jewish history so deep that even the Islamic Republic cannot erase it.
Now, in 2025 and into 2026, something has changed. The tensions in the Middle East, Israel's conflicts in Gaza, the shadow war between Iran and Israel, The drone strikes and missile exchanges have tightened the air inside Iran. For Jewish Iranians, the question has sharpened once more. When nations go to war, minorities pay prices they never voted for. Sources suggest the community has grown smaller still. Young people, those with options, are leaving. The underground pipeline, quiet visa applications, family sponsors abroad, whispered conversations about futures in Los Angeles or Toronto or Tel Aviv has quickened its pulse. And yet the elders remain, the ones who stayed in 1979 and are still here, the ones who buried parents in Iranian soil and cannot imagine their own bones resting anywhere else. One elderly rabbi in Isfahan, when asked about the future, reportedly said something that has been quoted in hushed tones throughout the community. He said, "We have survived Babylon. We have survived Rome. We have survived the Crusades and the Inquisition and the Holocaust. Do you really think we cannot survive a government?" What is happening in Iran right now to this ancient, resilient, quietly extraordinary community is one of the most complex human stories on earth. It is not a story of pure oppression, because that would be too simple. It is not a story of peaceful coexistence, because that too would be a lie. It is something harder to name, something more human. It is the story of people who carry two identities that the world insists cannot coexist, Iranian and Jewish, and who live every single day as living proof that the world is wrong. Thousands of years of history walk through the bazaars of Tehran in the form of a woman carrying groceries who whispers a Hebrew blessing before she eats. Millennia of survival echo in a synagogue where 10 men gather at dawn, in a city where the government calls their ancestral homeland an enemy, and they pray anyway. Quietly, stubbornly, beautifully. There is something in that stubborn survival that speaks not just to Jews, not just to Iranians, but to something universal. Something about what it means to belong to a land, to refuse to be erased, to hold your identity in your hands like a candle in the wind, shielded, trembling, but burning. They are still there. After 2,500 years, they are still there.